If you want to move your arms at, like, lightning speed, the absolute worst thing you can do is focus on your hands.
Right. It seems so counterintuitive.
It really does. I mean, have you ever watched a high-level athlete execute this flawless, rapid-fire combination of moves?
Oh, yeah. They just seem to be, like, bending time entirely.
Exactly. Completely unbothered by the chaos around them. It looks like magic. But today, we're going to prove to you that it isn't magic at all.
No, not at all. It's incredibly precise biomechanics.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We have a seriously amazing recording to share with you today.
We do. It's this rare, unvarnished audio recording of a master coaching and practice session.
Yeah, and you can literally hear everything. The squeak of the shoes on the floor, that sharp rhythmic thwack of the ball.
And this intense tactical back and forth between a coach and a really high-level student.
They're breaking down the exact mechanics required to seamlessly alternate between a forehand and a backhand strike in a racket sport. And our mission for today's deep dive is to extract the definitive physical and mental checklist from this.
Right, to show you how perfect, fluid movement is built from the ground up.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to build that perfect movement, we actually have to start by completely abandoning the arms.
Which is wild because, while this source focuses on a physical sport, these core principles of balance and timing, they apply to mastering any complex, fast-paced skill.
Yeah, you hold a racket in your hand, so naturally you assume the action originates in the hand.
But the coach in our source violently disagrees with that.
Right. The movement actually begins with the eyes and then the feet.
The coach insists that the legs must do the heavy lifting long before the arms are ever allowed to get involved.
One of the speakers in the recording points out this really fascinating mental trick. They say if you clearly see the ball, your body just instinctively knows what to do.
Right, but the coach jumps in to clarify the actual chain reaction happening there. It's not just magic.
It's eyes tracking the ball, right?
Exactly. Eyes track the ball, which tells the legs to fire and get the body into the exact right position.
And only then can the arms actually execute the forehand or the backhand. It makes me think of, like driving a car.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't just wildly turn the steering wheel hoping for the best. Your eyes look at the destination first, right?
Yeah, you look where you want to go.
Exactly. Your eyes look at the turn, and then your hands just sort of naturally follow that visual cue.
The visual trigger dictates the physical response.
But let me push back on this a little bit. When a ball is flying at your face in like a split second, isn't it completely overwhelming to be consciously thinking about your feet?
What's fascinating here is that focusing on the feet actually removes that feeling of being overwhelmed.
Wait, really? How does adding another thing to think about make it less overwhelming?
Because by trusting the eyes to lead the legs, you ensure that you are always in the optimal position.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, if your feet are wrong, if you're lazy with your positioning, your arms have to frantically compensate for that mistake.
Right. Your brain has to calculate some messy emergency swing.
Exactly. And that emergency compensation completely ruins the transition between a forehand and a backhand. Your muscles tense up and you feel that rush of panic.
Because your arms are doing damage control for your legs.
Yes. So if the legs do their job first, the arms just get to execute a clean, rehearsed motion.
The overwhelming chaos just disappears because you've removed the variables. That makes total sense.
It really does. It's about establishing that solid foundation first.
Which naturally leads us to the next part of the chain. Once the eyes have guided the feet to the right spot, how does the upper body actually execute those alternating swings?
This is where the source gets surprisingly specific about the body's center and its pivot points.
Yeah, they talk a lot about posture and pain, actually.
Right. A very common mistake players make is bending over way too much.
Like hunching forward to get closer to the action.
Exactly. And the source notes that this causes terrible lower back and hip pain.
Oh, obviously. But also ruins your balance, right?
Yeah. It completely destroys it. The player must stand taller and be more extended to actually stay comfortable and agile.
Because of the center of gravity, they talk about these double leg parallel movements.
Yes, during those parallel movements, your body's weight has to remain dead center.
You can't be leaning left or right.
If you lean too far to one side, you destroy your ability to swiftly alternate between the backhand and the forehand.
Because you've committed all your weight in one direction.
Yeah.
You have to haul yourself all the way back just to hit the next shot.
Right. You're wasting precious milliseconds recovering your balance.
And when you're alternating strikes, you just don't have those milliseconds to spare.
Not at all. Which brings us to the actual strike itself.
Yeah, the rules for the arm are super strict. The paddle face must start lower than the ball. You're coming from underneath.
And crucially, the pivot point for the swing has to be at the elbow.
Not the hand, not the wrist, the elbow.
The elbow is the fulcrum, and they stress accuracy over power here.
Right, they warn against trying to generate force by, like, over-twisting the body or flicking the wrist early on.
Because that ruins your accuracy. The swing should feel almost effortless.
Like a normal movement, relying on just a slight body twist rather than raw muscle. Here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Oh, the hinge concept.
Yes, think about your arm like a door hinge. If you have this heavy oak door and the main hinge, which is your elbow, is stable, the door opens smoothly.
It swings cleanly every time.
Exactly. But if you try to pivot that heavy door by violently twisting the doorknob, which would be your hand or wrist, the whole system becomes chaotic and weak.
The door just rattles. It's a great analogy for the physics of the movement.
The wrist just has too many tiny moving parts to be a stable fulcrum under that kind of velocity.
Right. And keeping your center of gravity strictly in the middle prevents that overcommitment we talked about. If you lean, you spend energy recovering.
But if you're centered and you use the elbow fulcrum,
the forearm gets to act as a clean, predictable pendulum.
it's mathematically perfect. You stay completely balanced and you just let the pendulum swing.
Which takes almost no brute force at all.
Okay, so we have the eyes, the stance, the centered gravity, and this elbow pivot.
The foundation is set.
Right. Now for the final piece of the puzzle, exactly when do you strike the ball?
This leads to my favorite part of the recording.
Oh, the debate. It's so intense.
It really does. There's this brilliant debate about timing phases, specifically what they call P2 versus transitioning into P3.
Yeah, let's break that down for everyone. So the coach has this P2 philosophy,
Right. P2 represents the exact peak of the ball's bounce.
the absolute highest point. And at that exact moment, the ball has the least amount of spin and the lowest force, right?
Exactly. It's essentially hanging there, weightless for a microsecond.
So the coach argues this is the absolutely perfect time to strike.
Because it requires the least amount of physical exertion. You don't have to fight the ball's incoming energy.
And it guarantees the highest accuracy. You're just tapping a stationary target with your elbow pendulum.
Right. That's the coach's rigid stance. But the student has a very different idea.
Yeah, the student argues for the delay philosophy. They're looking at a chart, and they want to wait just a fraction of a second after P2.
Heading right into P3, which is when the ball starts to descend.
And the why behind this delay is so fascinating. The student says hitting exactly at P2 feels rushed.
Or incomplete to their body, yeah.
Right. Waiting that tiny microscopic microsecond allows them time to physically transfer their body weight
They get to coil the body slightly.
and apply topspin. They brush up against the back of the ball.
And that topspin is critical. It makes the ball curve downward safely onto the table or court.
Which the student argues is much better for maintaining a consistent alternating rally.
Because it aggressively forces the ball down inside the lines.
So what does this all mean? I mean, I have to ask, isn't waiting longer inherently riskier?
It definitely adds a layer of risk.
Right, because if you wait for the ball to start dropping, aren't you letting the ball dictate the pace rather than taking control at the peak?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it explains so much about mastering a skill. This isn't actually a disagreement between them.
It's not.
No, it's a masterclass in skill progression. The coach is advocating for foundational mastery.
Oh, like forcing the student to prove they can do the basics first.
Exactly. Striking the dead ball at P2 guarantees accuracy and form without relying on force. You have to prove your posture and your elbow pivot are perfect there first.
You can't cheat at P2. If your mechanics are flawed, you'll miss the apex.
Exactly. But the student is discovering the next evolution of the skill.
They've mastered the baseline, and now they are intentionally trading a fraction of a second of time.
Yes, they are trading that time to gather kinetic energy and generate topspin.
They're essentially converting a flat defensive shot into controlled offense.
Precisely. But you have to earn the right to delay the strike.
You can't just jump straight to P3 without the foundation.
If you try to delay and add topspin without that centered posture and locked elbow, your arms will just panic.
You'll just wildly swing and miss.
Complete.
This has been such a journey. Let's recap the perfect transition we've extracted here.
It's a very clear checklist.
It starts with the eyes, right? Which command the feet.
Setting up that stable base before the upper body even moves.
Exactly. Relying on a perfectly centered posture, standing tall so you avoid that kinetic depth.
And then using an elbow-driven swing. No wrists, no chaotic hinges.
Just a clean pendulum, all culminating in the precise timing of the strike at the peak of the bounce.
Mastering the P2 dead ball before evolving to the P3 topspin.
It's honestly beautiful when you lay it out like that.
And you can apply this exact framework to any overwhelming task in your life.
Oh, absolutely.
Before trying to add, power or spin to a project at work or a complex situation, make sure your center of gravity is stable.
Make sure your eyes are on the target.
Right. Have you mastered the basic low-effort mechanics first? Don't try to force the complex moves if your footing isn't right.
Because if your foundation is shaky, your brain hits the panic button, and you end up doing frantic damage control.
Exactly. Slow down to establish the base.
I love that. And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over today.
The micropause.
Yes. The student and the source figured out that delaying their reaction by just a millisecond past the peak, waiting for P3, gave them the power to control the spin and the curve of the ball.
They traded a microsecond for ultimate control.
Right. So in our own incredibly fast-paced lives, where else might taking a deliberate micropause right at the climax of a situation give you the exact lever you need to curve the outcome in your favor?
It's a powerful question to ask yourself.
It really is. Think about where you can take that pause today. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.